Welcome to Pro Football's first 50 years, where we take the past and we bring it back to life. Now, I'm strictly talking the first 50 years here, 1920 to 1970. And especially if you're going to go back to a game from like the 20s or the 30s, I mean, you can obviously go online, find the box score, who won, who lost, who scored a touchdown, how far a field goal was somebody kicked, what the attendance was, where the game was played at. You might find starting lineups for each team, but exactly what happened during the game? Well, thanks to old newspaper articles, we get to take a little bit of a deeper dive into each and every game during the first 50 years of professional football. Now, a little news flash here for you. Ain't no fancy videos or nothing like that. All there is you and me for the next 30 to 60 minutes. So if that's all right with you, let's get it on. And today's game, this 12th and final game of the season for one of these two teams. Which team might that be? One team's season is over this week, and one team is going to the championship game. Funny you should ask. The New York Giants at the Washington Redskins at Griffith Stadium on December 13th, 1959. Both these teams couldn't be farther apart at this particular point in juncture in 1959 and then one another. I mean, the Giants are off the charts up here, and the Redskins are somewhere down in the abyss down here. They're not a good year for the Redskins, not a good time for the Redskins. The 50s were not super spectacular for the Redskins. The Redskins this year in 1959 would only win 3 games. 1960, they would win 1 game. 1961, they would win 1 game. So not the best of times. It wouldn't be really good until Vince Lombardi would take over as their head coach for the 1 year in 1969. Then, of course, 2 years later, George Allen would take over in 1971 and, kind of launch them. And then Gibbs would come in and, So then the Redskins, once 71 rolled around, the Redskins were pretty good for a while. But right now for the Giants, I mean, the Giants would finish, spoiler alert, the Giants would win this game, finish the season 10-2. Have the league's, they would have the league's best record. They were the only team that, they only played 12 games, but the Giants won 10. They were 10-2. The Colts, who would win the championship, only had 9 wins, but the Colts won the championship, so it doesn't matter how many wins the Giants have. Yeah, the Colts would win the championship. If you're Giant, this was the time to be a Giant fan. I mean, Giants went to the championship in 56, 58, 59, 61, 62, 63. After 63, it was time to jump off ship and start watching another sport, or rugby, croquet, whatever. They don't need whatever. Do something else, reading, pick up a book, take a nap, whatever. It was after 63. It was not a good time to be a Giant fan, but right now it was. Although the Giants went to all those championship games, they would win the championship in 56, but the other 5 times they went to the championship game, they would lose them all. And including this season here. But let me take a look at, as I said, we're looking at the Redskins. It just was not. We go to the Redskins team, we see a whole lot of L's, which even included the preseason. I mean, just a whole lot of L's here. Whole lot of loving going on. I mean, so you got they were 1-5 in the preseason, then they were 3-9 during the regular season. Now, for a brief moment, actually, after the first 3 weeks, they were 2-1, and they were tied atop of the Eastern Division. Then they would lose the next 3 games, and it would be 2-4. Then somehow, it just goes to show you, on any given Sunday, the Baltimore Colts would come to town, and the Redskins would, of course, I guess being Baltimore and Washington being so close in proximity, raises the level of everybody, I guess. And somehow the Redskins wind up winning this game. So they were actually 3-4, and they had the slimmest of hopes. They would have to pretty much run the rest of the table to really have a chance of winning the division, but it was not meant to be. Once they lost a tough game here to the Browns, and then it was pretty much over after that. I mean, they just got, shellacked in these last bunch of games. 31-17, 21-45-14, 34-14, and the Giants would win this game 24-10. The Redskins coach, Mike Nixon, was not a phenomenal coach. And if you look at the roster of the Redskins, it was kind of like, who are these guys? It was not a very good roster. Giants, on the other hand, as you see here, right? I mean, they had a whole lot of W's. They would lose. They would get blown out by the Eagles, and then they would lose a tough one here to the Steelers. Bobby Lane would throw a touchdown pass, but I think about a minute to go in the game. The Giants were winning 9-7, but Bobby Lane threw like a 45-yard or so touchdown. Let's take a look here. How far was the touchdown pass? 45-yard touchdown pass. There you go. Yep. To Tom Tracy, with about a minute or so to go in the game, and that's how they lost that one. But other than that, they won. I mean, the week before they blew out the Browns, and the Browns lose games, but with Paul Brown coaching and the team that the Browns had, they don't get blown out. And the Giants blew. I mean, these two games, we got 93-21. They outscored their opponents. I mean, in this game here, 45-14, they ran all over the Redskins. I said then they blew the Browns out to win the division, and then of course they would wind up winning this game here, 24-10. They'd have to come back in the second half to pull it off, but the Giants didn't need this game. Then they would go to the championship game. Now the Giants, they would lose 31-16, as you see here, but they were actually winning going into the fourth quarter, 9-7, and then the Baltimore Colts ran off 24 points to make it 31-9. Then the Giants scored with like about a minute or so to go in the game to make it somewhat kind of respectable. But the Giants had good coaching. And if we look up here, one of their coaches, of course, was Tom Landry, and unfortunately they let him go. Jimmy Lee Howe was a decent coach. He was not the greatest coach of all time. He was a decent coach. But a lot of when Jimmy Lee Howe was there, Vince Lombardi was the coach of the offense. Tom Landry was the coach of the defense. So he had some very good coaches underneath him. As I said, after this season, Tom Landry was gone to go coach the Cowboys. And then the year after that, Jimmy Lee Howe was gone, and all the Giants had left was Allie Sherman, who was a very good offensive-minded coach, but maybe not the best head coach, shall we say. Fortunately, the Giants had two great head coaches on their staff, and they let them both go. Two Hall of Fame head coaches on their staff, and they let them both go. And they were left with Allie Sherman. But it is what it is. Now, this game here was played at good old Griffith Stadium. Let's share the old screen here. Go to Wikipedia. All right, Griffith Stadium. Wikipedia, here we go. Griffith Stadium stood in Washington, D.C. from 1911 to 1965. The site was once home to a wooden baseball park, which was built in 1891. It was called Boundary Field or National Park after the team that played there, the Washington Senators/Nationals. It was destroyed by fire in 1911, a plumber's blowtorch. The stadium, it was replaced by a steel and concrete structure, at first called National Park and then American League Park. It was renamed Clark Griffith Stadium for the Washington Senators owner Clark Griffith in 1923. I mean, a lot of it was, mainly, from what I can remember, and a lot of the pictures that they have it was baseball. It hosted, World Series, Negro World Series games, All-Star games. Also home to the Redskins from 1937 to 1960. Ballpark was demolished in 1965 and is now occupied by Howard University Hospital. On March 17, 1911, Boundary Field, also known as National Park and American League Park, was destroyed by fire started by a plumber's blowtorch. This left the owners of the Washington Senators, because it was March 17th, because the owners of the Senators were in a difficult situation, because since it was March 17th, spring training had already begun for baseball. So obviously, as you're starting spring training, what happens in March? What happens in April? Well, the season begins. Well, Washington Senators, got about a month to go, if not even maybe even that. And it's like, we got a problem. Well, we ain't got a stadium. That's a huge problem. But Tom C. Noyes, the president of the Senators, gained approval from the club's board of directors to build a new ballpark with a steel grandstand on the same site as Boundary Field. The quick construction of the ballpark was reported by the Washington Post. Day and night, the chanting of the laborers has been heard in the vicinity. Like Aladdin's palace, the structure rose as if by magic. Opening day, 1911, the grandstand was sufficiently stable to host President William Howard Taft and the Boston Red Sox, as well as 16,000 fans. Construction of Griffith Stadium continued while the Senators were on the road. It was not completed until July 24th, 1931. So you figure that, they started sometime in March, April, May, June. It's like in 4 months. The one stadium got demolished, got removed, all the stuff, and they built a brand new stadium in 4 months. It's a very nice stadium. It's not very big. It didn't ever hold a lot of people. As you can see over here, the capacity. I mean, it just did not hold 27, 28, 29, 20, didn't hold a lot of people. The wooden ballpark had been laid out, the old one, the original one, with home plate through second base pointing eastward. The new ballpark got shifted a little bit, so the diamond rotators at the home plate through second base pointed southeast. A lot of expansion and changes to the field. You can also see over here, right, all the tenants to the stadium, even the Maryland Terrapins football team was there for 1 year. But you can see over here, right field seats and row houses were bootleg bleachers before the high fence was installed. So you can see, I guess these were called bootleg bleachers over here. But you can see here, like houses, people were maybe in the back here, or back here, maybe were watching from the houses for free. So. But once, I guess, a high fence was installed, it all did away with that. I'll show you a couple of pictures here. So a lot of it was, baseball oriented. Now, obviously, throughout the years, a lot of presidents, because we're Washington D.C., threw out first pitches there. A lot of sluggers were there. I mean, my goodness. That 37 All-Star game, Lou Gehrig, Joe Cronin, Bill Dickey, Joe DiMaggio, Charlie Gehringer, Jimmy Fox, Hank Greenberg. I mean, even I'll show you a picture here. I'll show you a picture. Babe Ruth was there. And I'm going to show you an interesting story a little later in our program here about the Georgetown Hoyas but the Quantico Marines. Keep that name in mind. But I mean, look at Georgetown Hoyas, who don't even have a football team anymore, against the Quantico Marines of all teams at Griffith Stadium in 1923. But you look in the background, the place is packed. I mean, maybe it wasn't totally sold out. If you look back here, it's all people back here. I don't know who's the Georgetown, which one's the Quantico Marines, but Quantico Marines are not a team to be fooled around with. Once again, I will show you that in a little while here. Redskins, previously based in Boston and named for the Boston Braves, moved their home to D.C. in time for the 1937 season. As Boston, they had won their division in 1936 and continued their winning ways in Washington, captured the first NFL championship in 1937. They continued as perennial contenders all through the war years. That is from 1933 to 1946. The championship games started in 33. So 33 to 46, the only two teams from the Eastern Division to make it to a championship game were the Giants and the Redskins. Nobody else. So every year, then once 36 rolled around, every year the Redskins were right there. Griffith Stadium was the location of the 40 and 42 NFL championship games with totally different results. The 40 championship game was a 73-0 triumph by the Chicago Bears over the Redskins, the highest scoring shutout game in the history of the NFL. The championship game in 42 was essentially a rematch with nearly the same players, and this time the Redskins upset the previously undefeated Bears 14-6. Now, obviously, in the war years, and so we're talking 42, we're in the war years. A lot of the teams were depleted because the players or best players or whatever went to war. Well, not necessarily so much with the Bears. I'm not sure exactly why, but that year in 1942, the Bears were just killing people. They scored all kinds of points. Let me tell you what. And for the Redskins to hold them to 6 points was rather remarkable. During the Redskins game on the afternoon of December 7, 1941 against the Eagles, an announcement was made over Griffith Stadium's public address system commanding all of the American generals and admirals there to report to their duty stations because it was the attack on Pearl Harbor. The Redskins finished the season with a record of 6 wins and 5 losses and third place in the NFL Eastern Division in 1941. Although the Redskins enjoyed only one winning record at home, which was 4-2 in 1956, during their final 13 seasons at Griffith Stadium, they still finished with an 81-58-6 overall record at the stadium over 24 years. I mean, this held many different events and all. This one right here shows a picture of Babe Ruth after being knocked unconscious during a 1924 game at Griffith. There he is right there. The Sultan of SWAT. And this is where Howard University Hospital, this is where the stadium was located. And of course, a marker indicates the location of Griffith Stadium's home plate inside of Howard University's hospital. So this is where home plate used to be. I mean, actual location of it, right? Let's say, go show you some pictures here. I said a lot of the big, like online, had to do with like baseball, but there are some nice pictures here. This one, December 7th, 1941 versus the Eagles. This is the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. It's somebody trying to crash over for a touchdown here. Excuse me. Goalpost here. You got the refs all in white. Is this game right here? I mean, look at the snow, right? You can't even see the field. Don't know. Didn't look like there was a ton of snow here, but the whole field was covered. And that's football there, baby. Football being played outdoors, on grass, in the elements. That's football. None of this stuff they got nowadays. Dome stadiums on artificial turf. Get the out of here. Another picture. I mean, you see, usually, especially, if you look here, right? This is 1941. And look at the stadium. I said it was not a huge, it only held like 30-something thousand people for the football games. But, so when they were good, you got a good team, people showed up. It was not that bad. Well, I'm sure they probably could have got more if the stadium was bigger, but you got this small, I hate this, you can click on these pictures and they're like microscopic. But you can see here, I don't know. Let's see, does it say? No. Oh, wait. Nope. Oops. Doesn't say what game this is or nothing. But you can see, this is probably, this is probably not in the 50s or anything like that. This is probably in the 40s or late 30s or whatever. The place is packed. Although, once again, this could be a college game too. So who knows? But you see, usually the place is packed. Here's a 1940 championship game. When the place is packed, people showed up. Let's see here. Here's a good pass from Sammy Baugh. I do believe the guy caught it. If I read it correctly, I think Wilbur Moore hauls his pass in. It's Sammy Baugh, baby. Throwing a bomb, laying it right in there. Unbelievable. But you can see, I mean, this is what, 1943, right? And the place is packed. There you go. Here's Slinging Sammy. Getting some protection there. This is definitely the 1940 championship game. I believe this is a touchdown right here. This might be the first play of the game, first or second play of the game. Guy runs for a touchdown right off the bat. See, the thing is what wound up happening was, and this is probably the 40 championship game too. What wound up happening was, it was kind of, sorry, buddy, my dog's at my feet. Each, between the 40 and 1940 and 42 championship game, each winning team had some big time motivation. I can't remember exactly what it was, but George Preston Marshall, I can't remember what the reasoning at this particular one, but in 1940 called the Bears babies or crybabies or something like that along the line, and Bears used that as motivation, and motivated they were, 73-0. Then in 1942, when the Bears came back and you lose 73-0 in the championship, you're embarrassed. As I said, it was pretty much a sellout, the same players on each team. And, the Redskins had a lot of motivation going for them there, being shut out to 73-0. So, but, a lot of the glory, games or whatever for the Redskins, in Griffith Stadium was, in the late 30s and the mid 40s, once the late 40s came and throughout the 50s, But, all right, let's go a little bit of pregame action here, shall we? What do we got here? Let's go to the December 13th, 1959 edition of the Evening Star, which is a Washington, D.C. paper. What are we at here? I got, there we are. I believe this is it, right? Okay. Have to probably refresh the page. Oh, yes. Performing a security verification. Let's see. Do I pass? Verification successful. Thank you. All right. Here we go. The Giants and Santa Claus and alumni here for the Redskins finale today. New York Giants, wearing their newly won Eastern Division crown at a jaunty angle, troop into Griffith Stadium today to help the Redskins ring down the curtain on a long, bruising season. Santa Claus and 36 former Redskins, including some of the brightest and most colorful figures in the club's 23-year history, will be there too, helping make it one of the season's best shows. More than 25,000 fans are expected to take it in. Pre-game ceremonies may delay the opening kickoff 5 or 10 minutes beyond the normal 2:05 time. The weather outlook is for a fairly mild but partly cloudy afternoon. This will be the Giants' final full-dress skirmish before the championship playoff, December 27th. And Coach Jim Lee Howell never brought a finer team to town. Injuries will keep Phil King, a reserve fullback, out of action, and possibly halfback Alex Webster and end Pat Summerall, the team's place-kicking star and the league's leading scorer. But old Charlie Connolly, Frank Gifford, and Mel Triplett are sound of wind and limb. I never heard of that before. And should give the local posse a merry chase. All right. The Redskins, who've had lengthy casualty list all year, they've had their injuries, especially at quarterback. Eddie LeBaron is their best quarterback. And it seems like every week there's always something wrong with him. Redskins, who have had a lengthy casualty list all season, are probably at their physical worst for the 12th and final game. But Coach Mike Nixon hopes to make a better showing than in the first game, which the Giants won 45-14, thanks to Connolly's first half passing and Gifford's legwork. Don Bossler, the Redskins' top ground gainer, with 644 yards, isn't expected to play because of a pinched neck muscle. His place will be taken by Johnny Olszewski, the team's number 2 man with 393 yards. There's been a lot of talk about this being the last game for some Redskins, such as Chet Ostrowski, recuperating from a knee operation in Doctor's Hospital, Chuck Jurzanovich, Eddie LeBaron, and others. It might be, but none definitely has announced his retirement. LeBaron will be concentrating on his passes to Bill Anderson, Jim Podoley, and company, and Jurzanovich, after being honored last night by the alumni, undoubtedly will want to show that he deserved it. Nixon, after juggling the squad all season trying to find a winning combination, is is turning Big Don Bell to offensive tackle and will start Will Renfro at guard if he's ready. Renfro is recuperating from scalp wounds suffered in an auto crash in which his wife was critically injured. Defensively, where the Redskins have had the most trouble, Nixon will have a fairly good line with John Pollock and Ed Meadows at ends, Bob Tonoff and Don Lawrence at tackles, and Ralph Felton, Frank Kuchta, and Art Gobb backing them up. I mean, it's like you look at it's like, they go over their team and it's like, who the heck are you? It's like, you go to some of the other teams and you can rattle off a couple Hall of Famers. I mean, you're not getting that with the Redskins here. Another change is necessary at the left wing, with Ben Scotty's injured ribs keeping him idle. Doyle Nix will replace him with Gary Glick at the right wing and Richie McCabe at left safety. Dick James is slated for a two-way role, right half on offense and right safety on defense. Wow. Past glories relived at the Redskins dinner. Redskins greats and near greats who made the Washington Club a football power in a bygone era relived some of their past glory and recalled some of their shenanigans at the Redskins alumni second annual dinner dance last night at the Sheraton Park Hotel. The lone serious note of the evening was the presentation of the first Distinguished Player Award to linebacker Chuck Jurzanovich of the 1959 squad. Jurzanovich, who will round out a decade of pro play with the Redskins against the Giants today in the season's finale at Griffith Stadium, received an engraved gold-plated football from Al DeMeo, alumni president. If the time permits, the ceremony will be repeated before the start of the game, with Sammy Baugh making the presentation. And then there's just a bunch of other stuff. All right, then we got we have the Daily News. Pre-game action from the Daily News. Let's go to December 13th. What are we at here? All right, December 13th, 1959 edition of the Daily News. Giants 10-point favorites over the Skins. Oh, I don't know. Take the Giants and lay the points, baby, right? Scout. And they scout the Colts fray on TV. Now, the Colts played on Saturday. So the Giants knew that they were playing the Colts in the championship game, and they watched the Colts play on TV. The Giants, still champions of the Eastern Division and 10-point favorites to flail the Redskins in today's wind-up game, departed for the nation's capital on an earlier-than-usual train yesterday. It wasn't that Coach Jim Lee Howell had called an extracurricular workout at Griffith Stadium, but merely that he wanted all hands in front of the TV sets to scout the Baltimore Colts against the Los Angeles Rams. Each Giant was under orders to take notes on the Baltimore plays and players which concerned his particular area of operation. This was just too good an opportunity to miss because it seemed a virtual certainty that the Colts would be the party of the second part of the showdown for the NFL championship 2 weeks hence. It was the second Saturday in a row the Giants have caught the Colts act. A week ago, all of them glued their sets as Baltimore bounced the 49ers in San Francisco. Not that Howell and his staff are slouching, sloughing off. But the game with the Redskins, even though they routed them 45-14 only 2 Sundays back, a letdown at this stage, the coach said, could prove disastrous. There's the chance we couldn't get back up again, and there's also the injury factor. A team taking it easy invariably winds up with a flock of cripples. Professional pride is another factor, and there's the further incentive for a victory in that the Giants thus would become the first Eastern Division club to win 10 games in a single season since Cleveland turned the trick back in 1953. I mean, nowadays, if you're 10-7, because we play 17 games nowadays, and soon it probably be they're trying to get 18 games in. I have no idea why. To me, it's too many football games. But nowadays, if you win 10 games, if you're 10-7, hey, that's a winning record. That's good. But back in the day, you win 10, you're 10-2. When I watch football, you were 10-4. That's a good season. That's a real good season. There's individual incentive too. Charlie Connolly is the league's premier pitcher with a per-attempt average of 8.77 yards, and a good showing could mean his first aerial crown in a dozen years. Pat Summerall, the place-kicking specialist, leads the NFL in scoring with 84 points and could win that title. In addition, he has an outside chance at tying Lou Groza's all-time NFL record of 23 in one season. Pat is 4 boots shy of that mark. Well, that's not going to happen. Well, if you include the championship game, yeah, because he kicks 3 field goals in the championship game. So then there's Frank Gifford, who is enjoying another tremendous campaign. Gift needs only 17 points to top Ken Strong's all-time Giant record of 351 and 30 yards to surpass Eddie Price's all-time rushing total of 3,292. He already has beaten his own yardage mark for receiving with 727 on 39 catches, as against his previous high of 603 yards in 1956. Gift's total offensive statistics to date show 1,334 yards gained passing, running, and receiving, and 9 touchdowns scored. And Bob Schnelker will be going all out too, for he is having his best campaign with 33 catches for 656 yards and 6 touchdowns. The Redskins can't count on a letdown by the Giants' defense either. Tom Landry's Legions boast the best mark in the league against rushing, 3.1 yards against. And Howell is looking for Robustelli, Huff, and company to maintain the status quo in this respect. Giants are in their finest physical trim since the start of the exhibition season. All the cripples, Summerall, Shaw, Guy, Safari, and King, have recovered, with the exception of Gifford's halfback running mate, Alex Webster. The Big Redhead missed 3 practice sessions this week as a result of twin injuries to his leg and back, and Howell has listed him as a doubtful participant. Rookie Joe Morrison will start in Alex's spot. The Redskins figured to be far rougher the second time around for the simple reason little Eddie LeBaron is himself again and ready for full-time quarterback duty. The pint-sized pitcher was missing for a full half in the first meeting at the stadium, but in the second half he perked up the Washington offense despite a damaged ankle which hadn't completely healed. The remaining games on the final Sunday of the regular season find the Eagles 2.5-point favorites over the Browns in Philadelphia, Steelers 10-point favorites over the Cardinals in Pittsburgh, the Bears 7.5-point favorites over the Lions in Chicago, and the 49ers 5-point favorites over the Packers in San Francisco. And there's Eddie LeBaron right there. He's like, it depends upon what some people, you see in some papers maybe he's 5'6". Other papers I saw he was 5'7". So he's not very tall. He's not the 6'4", 6'5" quarterbacks that we have, nowadays. Not that all quarterbacks, but some of them, they like the quarterbacks being tall so they can see over the line of scrimmage. Right? All right, so let's go to the Evening Star. We'll go to a little game action now, huh? What do you think, huh? December 14th, 1959 edition of the Evening Star, Washington, D.C. paper. All right. Dun, dun, dun. All right, here we go. I got to refresh the page. Whoops. Giants Colts await playoffs as regular season ends. Kyle Rote of the Giants zips into the end zone on a 36-yard scoring pass from Charlie Connolly in the third quarter of yesterday's pro football finale at Griffith Stadium. Dick James dives after Rote. Tally put the Giants ahead at 14-10 in the Eastern Division champion. And the Eastern Division champions wound up winning 24-10. They will play the Colts December 27th in Baltimore for the National Football League title. All right. There's a lot of things went on, too. I mean, after the game was over, Bobby Lane was 23 yards shy of breaking Sammy Baugh's passing record. Well, what wound up happening was Bobby Lane with Pittsburgh. Yeah, he had such a great game that he had like 4 touchdown passes or something. They had a really good game. They pulled him out after 3 quarters because they had such a big lead, and they put Len Dawson in there. Imagine that, having 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Same thing with the Eagles. The Eagles had Sonny Jurgensen, right, and Norm Van Brocklin. There's their 2 quarterbacks. But Bobby Lane, of course, sooner or later would wind up passing Sammy Baugh's record. Although he would have to wait till the following season to do it. One of the toughest rebuilding jobs ever tackled by a Redskins coach faces Mike Nixon after yesterday's 24-10 loss to the New York Giants before 26,198 fans in the season finale at Griffith Stadium. It's possible that the enormity of it escapes even Nixon. It was relatively, the both teams did a good job running the ball. Giants had a little bit of an edge as far as passing. Each team, let's see, the Redskins lost 2 fumbles, Giants lost 1. Each team had pass intercepted. Redskins only had 1 penalty, 5 yards. The Giants had 36 penalty yards. So, let's see, escapes even Nixon, who said that if he had to play the season all over again, I wouldn't do anything different. Mike blamed the team's 5th straight defeat, which gave it a 3-9 record for the season, on injuries which have dogged the Redskins all season. But imperfections, which cost the Redskins 2 touchdowns, one on a smartly executed 80-yard pass play from Eddie LeBaron to Ed Sutton again, were obvious. Maybe smartly executed. Jozanovic is quitting. LeBaron is one of those who may not return in 1960, although he said he probably will be back. Chuck Jozanovic, Eddie LeBaron will wind up being the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys in 1960. Chuck Jozanovic, veteran middle linebacker, announced that he definitely is quitting after 10 years in the league, and his departure will only aggravate one of the team's biggest problems. At least 6 others should be traded or released before next year if Nixon hopes to have a winner, which they won't, because they're only going to win 1 game the next year. The Redskins appeared to be cursed with more than their share of mediocrity for a genuine pro team. It was apparent yesterday they have too many inconsistent players who make a big play and offset it by 2 or 3 miscues. While Nixon is about it, he may as well do a thorough job of rebuilding. With 36 alumni and the Baltimore Colts and their coaching staff looking on the windswept action, the Redskins helped themselves to a 10-7 lead in the first half and lost it with some cunny-thumbed football in the second. The only possible good that may come from it is that it may encourage some draftees to sign for next year. Our record might be an incentive, Mike said. It ought to make them realize that they can make this ball club. Nixon and his aides will concentrate on signing the draftees and scouting potential material in the various bowl games coming up. After that, they'll go to work on the films, breaking them down, game by game, play by play, to ferret out the flaws. Giants, who meet the Colts in Baltimore on December 27th, in the championship playoff, were no world beaters. There were times in the first half when they looked quite ordinary. Charlie Connolly, who probably held on to his number one league ranking with 15 completions and 23 passes for 207 yards, threw a 9-yard six-pointer to Joe Morrison for, there you go, he's got some stats here. Triplet, Morrison, Gifford, King. A lot of guys running the ball. Eddie Barons, 14 out of 35. So those are the stats. All right, so what do we got here? We got see the Redskins. All right, let's go to the next page here. So he threw a 9-yard six-pointer to Joe Morrison. For their lone touchdown in the first half. Connolly tossed another to Kyle Rote for 36 yards before turning the reins over to Don Heinrich in the last quarter. But in the main, the Giants didn't show enough to make the Colts lose any sleep. Even so, their letdown wasn't enough to let the inconsistent Redskins score an upset victory. Well, I mean, also you figure the Giants were probably playing kind of a vanilla ball, too. You want to show the Colts anything. Pass defense, which Nixon partially blames on the team's inability to rush the passer, offensive blocking, and LeBaron's passing were way off. We've got to put more pressure on the passers, Mike said, thinking ahead to next year. With a four-man line, the linebackers have got to nail the passer, and we haven't done it. Connolly wasn't knocked down once, but our guy was, even though we gave him pretty good protection. There is no question that injuries, which dogged the Redskins almost from the start of the campaign, were costly. Not one player escaped the jinx, and there were times yesterday when the loss of one man left nobody to take his place. But even when his squad has been reasonably healthy, it never quite has measured up to expectations. In yesterday's ragged but exciting fourth, for example, the Redskins ended up short of a touchdown because of a missed block. This was when Sutton was stopped on a fourth down play on the visitors' 2-yard line after a 1-yard gain. We blew a key block on that one, Nixon said. It was a good call by LeBaron, and if we had blocked the outside man, I guess Bill Stitz was the one supposed to block him, we would have had a touchdown. But we missed him. When they got 6 and 7 men on the line against you, you can't miss anybody. If you do, you're dead. The culprit, ironically, was Jim Podoley, who helped move the ball into scoring position with a 26-yard run on a pitch out from LeBaron. Sutton, who had one of his best days with 58 yards on 11 carries, had the 80-yard touchdown pass from LeBaron called back because he was in motion before the ball was snapped. It was the game's most spectacular maneuver. So they had a touchdown. They got called back as that That was the 5-yard penalty. That was the only penalty the whole game the Redskins had, and called back a touchdown. The Redskins were camped on the Giants' 10-yard line at the finish, unable to punch the ball over after moving 75 yards, mostly on LeBaron's passes and penalties against the visitors. It didn't get much promise for better things in 1960 to those hardy fans who stuck it out to the chilly finish. A 30-yard run by Sutton featured the Redskins' initial attack, which took them 80 yards for their one touchdown. Dick Haley took it over from the 3-yard line with a nifty bit of tightrope walking at the right end. Connolly got it back with passes to Frank Gifford, Bob Schnelker, and Joe Morrison. The last for 9 yards, with Mel Triplett contributing a 13-yard run to break the monotony. But the Redskins held the Giants 3 times in the second quarter, and Sam Baker booted a 39-yard field goal for a 10-7 lead. It looked as though they really meant business. Baker later missed another try from just 32 yards out. It was different from the first meeting between the clubs a few weeks ago when New York ran up 38-0 lead in the first half and coasted the rest of the way. But any doubt concerning yesterday's mate winner was erased. Hold on. Ultimately, concerning yesterday's ultimate winner was erased at the start of the second half when Gifford's running and Connolly's passes to Rote took the Giants 80 yards on 6 plays for a touchdown and a 14-10 lead. Pat Summerall, who went into the game as the league's leading scorer, added 3 points to his total with a 14-yard field goal late in the quarter. He also kicked his team's 3 extra points, but his 90-point total left him 4 points shy of Green Bay's Paul Hornung in the final standings. The Giants marched 78 yards for their final score, with Morrison taking the ball over from the 1-yard line. Now, to show you about the Montego. The Quantico. The Quantico Marines were hailed. Remember, I showed you that picture from Griffith Stadium, the Georgetown Hoyas and the Quantico Marines, 1923. A picture. Well, this is 1959. Right? It's a few years hence, but the Quantico Marines were hailed today as the National Service Champions after routing McClellan Air Force Base 90-0. With an amazing display of power in the Shrimp Bowl game yesterday. It was the 11th straight victory for Quantico, its best record since the 13-0 season of 1948. McClellan finished 9-2. So McClellan came in at 9-1 and got blown out 90-0. Quantico only had 21 first downs, but where is my? There we go. Look at me later. Well, you had 473 yards rushing, 201 yards passing. They were 10 out of 13 passing. They didn't punt one time. They lost 2 fumbles. So they had 674 yards of offense. Quantico at 9-0 lead in the first quarter. There was a safety in there. But that hardly indicated what was to come. The Marines scored 23 points in the second period, 28 in the third, and 30 points in the fourth quarter. They won 90-0. So the Quantico Marines are not something to be fooled with. All right, so now let's go to, actually, you know what? Let's go to the New York Times, shall we? Let's go to the New York Times. They have a little bit of a... a little bit of an article here. Here we go. Picture of Frank Gifford running the ball here. Giants beat Redskins and finished with, at best, NFL marks since the 1953 season. Clearing the way. Jack Stroud, the Giants, hits Doyle next to the Redskins, throws a forearm at him. Like, take the dude's head off. That's some blocking there, baby. Right? Yeah, Frank Gifford cutting off him for a nice little gain here. Gifford picked up 19 yards on the play. I put the ball down to like the 4-yard line or something like that. Little aside from the pride that goes with the championship was at stake, but the Giants had enough of that today to prove their right to the title they clinched a week ago. As a result, the Eastern Conference champions of the National Football League rallied in the second half for a 24-10 victory over the Washington Redskins at Griffith Stadium. The New Yorkers, who have an important date with the Colts at Baltimore 2 weeks hence, concluded their regular season with a record of 10 victories and 2 losses. That is the best by any NFL team since 1953 Browns, who achieved an 11-1 mark, and the Detroit Lions posted a 10-2 mark that year, 1953. So 54, 55. But the Lions would wind up winning the championship that year. I believe it was 17-16. I believe it was. Helping to make the victory possible were the New York standbys, Charlie Connolly, Frank Gifford, and Pat Summerall, plus a newcomer, Joe Morrison. Connolly passed, Gifford ran, Summerall kicked, and Morrison scored twice. Most of the good done by Jim Lee Howell's Giants, however, developed belatedly. They fell behind early in the opening quarter after an unstoppable ground offense saw Eddie LeBaron's engineer an 80-yard drive that required 10 plays. The 10th was a 3-yard sweep around the right flank by Dick Haley, a rookie back from Pittsburgh. Sam Baker added the point. Some 5 minutes later, Morrison, a former Cincinnati back, took a perfect pass from Connolly, good for 9 yards and 6 points. Summerall converted, making it 7-all. There were moments in the early going when the Giants were impressive, but most of the luster belonged to Coach Mike Nixon's off-beaten Redskins. Only once throughout the first half were the Redskins stopped for a loss. That developed along about the 11-minute mark of the second quarter when Harlan Safari and Roosevelt Greer combined to set down Johnny Olszewski for a 1-yard loss on the New York 32. This belated bit of business by the Eastern Rulers merely spurred the Redskins' kicking specialist, Sam Baker. Sam booted a 39-yard field goal, snapping the 7-7 tie and sending Washington ahead for the second time. After the intermission, it became New York's turn to shine before the 26,198 spectators. Connolly's aerials seldom have been better, as he found Kyle Rote, Bob Schnelger, and other receivers time and again. And Gifford, picking up 84 yards and 17 carries, became the greatest rushing ground gainer in the history of the Giants. He now has 3,347 yards against the 3,292 yards credited to Eddie Price. A pass from Connolly to Rote at 2:32 in the third quarter scored for the Giants. That advance of 80 yards needed only 6 plays, after which Summerall added a point. Pat's 14-yard field goal at 14:05 made it 17-10. It was his 20th field goal of the season. Connolly was replaced by Don Heinrich at the fourth period as the fourth period started, and the substitute quarterback moved the Giants through 78 yards and 11 plays. Morrison went over from the 1. Then Summerall lifted his season total to 90 points, made the conversion. The New York fans will not be able to purchase tickets from the Giants for the December 27 title playoff game at Baltimore. The front office expressed regret that it would be unable to handle equitably any public sale of tickets. Approximately 3,200 tickets will be in the allotment of the contending club. However, by the time all the players and officials have been taken care of, too few tickets will remain to do justice to the needs of the New York fans. Wow, it's a shame. There's the teams, and as you can see here, right? The Redskins were up 10-7 at halftime. And the Giants put up 17 points in the second half and wound up winning. There's your starters right there. All right. So let's see now. Let's go to what we got here. What we got. Go to the Daily News, the December 14th, 1959 edition of the Daily News. Here we go. Giants come alive, wallop the Redskins 24-10 in the finale. Redskin halfback Dick James is off on an 8-yard jaunt in the early action. Giants snapped out of their complacency here in the second half this frigid afternoon and slapped the Redskins for 17 points and a 24-10 triumph without showing the spying Baltimore Colts coaching staff anything very fancy. The Eastern Division champions ran their victory total for the season to 10, the first team to achieve that many triumphs in the division since the Browns of 1953. All week long, or since the Giants had clinched their crown in the rout and riot tilt of last Sunday when they beat the Browns 48-7, Coach Jim Lee Howe had been watching the complacency set in, and his worst fears were realized when the Redskins, scalped by a 45-14 count only 2 weeks ago, left the field at halftime with a 10-7 edge. But the letdown didn't last. Guys like Frank Griffith, who was gunning for Eddie Price's all-time Giant rushing record, Charlie Connolly, who was the league's leading aerialist going into the fray, and rookie Joe Morrison all had oodles of incentive. These merry Andrews provided the life, and the Giants won it going away. The Colts coaching boss, Weeb Eubank, may have seen a couple of things which could cause his Colts concern in the championship clash a week from Sunday in Baltimore. Morrison, for instance, the youngster from Cincinnati, got a chance to go all the way at right halfback for the injured Alex Webster, and he turned in a terrific job, scoring 2 of the 3 Giant touchdowns, his first tallies as a pro. And Morrison would have a long career with the Giants. He would be, I believe it was after the 72 season when he retired. So he was with the Giants for 3 different decades, the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And, of course, then they retired his number. The Redskins broke the scoring ice, and we do mean ice, because the temperature plummeted during the course of the afternoon as old Griffith Stadium rocked under the force of the wintry gusts. The Washington Salary Drive carried 80 yards in 10 plays, plus an interference call against Lyndon Crow on the Giants' 3. Dick Haley, in a halfback for Dick James, racked up the TD on a 3-yard run around right end as Jim Ketcavage made one of his rare misses of a tackle. That was at 6:01 of the opening period. But the Giants got that one back in a hurry with a 65-yard, 8-play spin. Connolly touched off this parade with a 28-yard pitch to Gifford, and during the course of the march, also connected with Bob Schnelker, who was polishing off his best pass-catching campaign for the Giants, and with Morrison. The touchdown play covered 9 yards, rookie Joe spearing the 8-yard peg on the 1, after which he feinted the defense dead with a pretty stop-and-go maneuver. Connolly wound up completing 15 of 23 pitches for 217 yards and 2 touchdowns before being relieved at the start of the 4th period by Don Heinrich. Chuck went into the game as the league's leading aerialist, and his performance figured to be good enough to keep him there. The Redskins' Sam Baker booted a 39-yard field goal just before halftime, but the Washington crew began to come apart at the seams as the Giants applied the pressure in the second half. The crowd of 26,198 brave souls rooted like mad against the champs to no avail, and the second half was just 2 minutes, 32 seconds old when the Giants moved in front to stay. The scoring sortie carried 80 yards in 6 plays. It began with a 19-yard Gifford gallop and proceeded to a culmination with 3 artistically conceived Connolly. Now let's go to the next page here. Let's go to another Daily News, December 14th, 1959 edition of the Daily News. All right, here we go. Connolly passes. The first was to Gifford for 9 yards, and the next two back-to-back to Captain Kyle Rote. Each of these was worth 26 yards, the second going for the touchdown. Gary Glick and Dick James were the GOATs for Rote's catching capers. Without doubt, Baltimore's Webank had a very good look on the Giants' defense, but just as a reminder, the Landry Legion came up with a goal line stand in the fourth when it appeared the Redskins might tie it. Pat Summerall had kicked his 20th field goal, a club record, in the final minute of the third chucker to up the count to 17-10. That's 17-14. But the Skins moved in from the Giant 45 after Chuck Jozanovich retrieved Phil King's bobble. Jim Poterly peeled off 26 yards over the Giant left tackle for first down on the 10, but the Giants defense got hard-nosed and took the leather via downs at the 2. I don't know why they didn't try to kick a field goal, but all right. Let's see. Ed Sutton, Washington's best ground gainer in an attack which hit the Giants for 169 yards, which is the top effort of the season against the Giants, was fed the football by Eddie LeBaron on fourth down, but Sam Huff smacked him down on the 2. Heinrich was at the helm as the Giants covered 78 yards in 11 plays for the wrap-up tally. Gifford was loose again on this drive, winding up with 84 yards on the day to fracture Eddie Price's all-time Giant rushing mark. Giff's total is up to 3,347 as against Eddie's old mark of 3,292. That's all there was to it. When the chips were down, the Giants' all-pro pride brought them through to a victory that didn't mean a thing except for the satisfaction of it. Even if Giant fans who bet their heroes were happy, the New Yorkers were 10-point picks and won by 14. All right, so we got one more here. We got the December 14th, 1959 edition of the Times-Union. Ooh. We got a little article here. Screen, Times-Union. All right, here we go. Colts Giants, December 27th for the title. Here's that same picture. Jack Stroud, New York guard, puts on a key block on Doyle Nix, number 20 of Washington, that helped Frank Gifford to a 19-yard gain, putting the ball in the Redskins' 4, setting up the final touchdown. It's Unitas versus Connolly in a replay. Of course, the replay is from the 58 championship game. It'll be Chuck Connolly against Johnny Unitas in a duel of red-hot quarterbacks when the New York Giants and Baltimore Colts clash for the second straight year as the climax to another record National Football League season. Both stars demonstrated over the weekend that they're ready for the big show. All-Pro Connolly throwing 2 touchdown passes at the Giants beat the Washington Redskins 24-10 yesterday, and the young superstar Unitas hurling 3 scoring passes when the Colts clinched the Western Division crown with a 45-26 triumph over the Los Angeles Rams. That was on Saturday. The decks thus were cleared for a replay of last year's famous sudden death overtime won by the Colts 23-17 at Yankee Stadium. The teams have 2 weeks to prepare for this year's showdown in Baltimore, December 27th. A total of 315,320 fans turned out for the final weekend of the regular season, raising the league's season attendance to a new mark of 3,321,444, surpassing the old mark, which was set the year before. So they got over 300,000 more fans out in 59 than they did in 58, and the 3 million people that showed up was a record in 58. So each year, it keeps getting better and better. Then, of course, it doesn't hurt because in 1960, they added another team. right? And then 1961, they added another team, so you got more games being played. Of course, then in 1961, they added 14-game schedule. Of course, then more people kept coming to see games. And now pretty soon we're going to be playing 18 games with 32 teams, so there's going to be even more and more, so. But you can see, I mean, football, without question, was definitely on the rise back in the late 50s. The Cleveland Browns defeated the Eagles. The Bears defeated the Lions. The Packers routed the 49ers. And the Steelers scored a 35-20 victory over the Cardinals. Now, the Western Division was rather tight. The Colts were 9-3. The Bears were 8-4. And the Packers and the 49ers finished at 7-5. So it was a very tight race. There was all 4 teams all within 2 games of first place. Now the Giants kind of won. The Giants wound up were 10-2. The Browns and the Eagles were both 7-5. So the Giants wound up winning by a 3-game margin. So they had a comfortable. They won by a comfortable margin. Giants became the first team to win 10 games in a season since 1953. Connerly completing one of the best seasons of his career through touchdown strikes of 9 yards to Joe Morrison and 26 to Kyle Rote, and the Giants clinched matters with a 77-yard drive in the 4th period. Frank Gifford, the Giants' ace, 190-pound halfback, gained 84 yards and 17 rushes to set a new career club mark, 3,347 yards in that department. Chicago Bears clinched second place in the Western Division and achieved a 7-game winning streak for the first time in 16 years. Yeah, because they were 1-4 at one point. I mean, you're 1-4 and you're in last place. Things ain't looking too good. But old Papa Bear Hallis whipped them around. They won the final 7 games and they finished 8-4. So that's rather remarkable. And then, of course, the Packers went up 7-5 under rookie head coach Vince Lombardi, as Bart Starr threw 2 touchdown passes and Paul Hornung tallied home runs of 13, 3, and 2 yards. That was that. And then, of course, this one, I'll read this real fast, too. So, he wound up winning it anyway. I mean, he wound up, surpassing it was the next season, but the coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers didn't know Bobby Lane was nearing a record. Quarterback Bobby Lane of the Pittsburgh Steelers will have to wait until next season, which he did, and he wound up surpassing him, to break Sammy Baugh's all-time National Football League passing record of 22,085 yards. Lane needed only 224 yards yesterday to surpass Baugh. He got 201 after 3 quarters. Then sat out the final period after passing for 4 touchdowns and scoring 1 himself. So he was involved in all 5 of their touchdowns. Then they asked, why did Lane sit out the final quarter? I didn't know Bobby was on the verge of breaking Baugh's record, said Coach Buddy Parker after the Steelers thumped the Cardinals. Anyway, I had to give Len Dawson a chance to play. He sat on the bench virtually all season. We were ahead, and I just wanted to give Dawson a chance. So, I mean, it doesn't hurt that, too. I mean, you got 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks on your team. Of course, at the time, they didn't know Lenny Dawson was going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback, but it certainly didn't hurt. But it just goes to show you, the all-time, back in 1959, the all-time passing mark for yardage was 22,000 by quarterback. I mean, nowadays it's you get 22,000 like in, I don't know what, 5 seasons nowadays. I mean, the league is just it's different, but it's not. It'll always be about running, passing, blocking, tackling. It'll always be about that. But things have changed a little bit, But this game here, as I said, was just the Giants did not need to win this one. They needed to stay healthy. And then, of course, they realized that the Colts were going to be watching them, to see if they could pick up anything. So the Giants, I'm sure, kept things kind of vanilla, the way that a lot of times they do nowadays, like in the preseason. And so the Giants, came out relatively healthy, and in 2 weeks' time, they would wind up taking on the Colts in a rematch. And as I said, the Giants actually, the rematch when they were in Baltimore, actually took a 9-7 lead going into the 4th quarter. But the wheels came off the bus. the Colts scored 24 straight points, and the Giants would save a little face by scoring a touchdown late in the game to make it a little closer. But it was not meant to be for the Giants. But same thing here with this game here. I mean, hey, the Redskins played them tough. But, I mean, it said, two teams going totally different direction. For the Giants, they were heading off to the championship game for the second consecutive year. And third time in 4 years, they went 56. They went 58 and 59. And the Redskins won 3 games all season long, 4 if you include their 1 win out of their 6 preseason games. So they played 18 games and they won 4 all season long. So, and of course, to couple that up with the fact that the Redskins would win 1 game in 1960 and 1 game in 1961, this was not a good time to be a Redskin fan. So that's the way it was on this date, December 13th, 1959, as the New York Giants took on the Washington Redskins at Griffith Stadium in pro football first 50 years. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.